Hi everyone, it's Tom with the LEC recap of the 6th week of the LEC Summer Split. We had 10 more games on the menu, and with these regular split almost coming to a close, all these wins definitely matter. Of course, statistically they matter the same as the wins in the first week, but with the season almost ending, teams really cannot afford to lose if they want to have a chance at making it to the playoffs. So let's take a look at the games that were played and share some interesting highlights as usual. We kicked off with Misfits versus Excel, and Misfits had a very interesting draft where they went for a heavy poke comp with Jace, Zoe, and Varus, and this made it very difficult for Excel to play. They were trying to find a pick on Misfits and from there on win a team fight, but Misfits just kept their distance really and kept poking Excel down. And even though, you know, Excel did kind of keep up with the plays and with the kills, you could definitely see that they couldn't do anything with it, because anytime they would start an objective, Misfits kept poking them down and the Excel was forced off the objective. So that was pretty difficult for Excel to navigate it. And I have to say that they played it pretty well. They were trying to make the best out of it, but unfortunately for them, Misfits was just slightly better in playing with their composition. They dealt simply too much damage, and Excel lost that game to Misfits, who, you know, grabbed another win and did so pretty comfortably, I would say, in the end, with a good composition. We then went to Rogue versus Shogun of Fear, which was a very boring game. It was very one-sided. Rogue got ahead early. Shogun of Fear couldn't do much about it. Broken Blade, who is the best performing player on this roster for Shogun of Fear, performed well on Irelia, but I do think that, you know, he was carrying a lot of dead weight, and as a team, Shogun of Fear just had very little to say. 15 minutes into the game, Rogue was 6k ahead, and that lead only continued to grow. So it was a very one-sided game and a very easy victory for Rogue. Mad Lions versus SK Gaming then was a much more interesting game, because Mad Lions was staring in the face of a Mundo jungle for SK Gaming, and that this worked out very well for SK Gaming. Treats got 2 early kills on the Mundo early on in the bot lane of Mad Lions, and this was a small lead that just continued to snowball in the advantage of SK Gaming, because even though Mad Lions held on in the early game pretty decently, by, you know, they got some gold, but mostly they got 2 drakes, which, you know, advanced them towards an objective and possible win condition of getting the Dragon Soul. When the game reached the middle stages, you could just see that SK Gaming was just too strong, because they had a Mundo that was basically unkillable, and Mad Lions tried to find picks by circling around the Dr. Mundo, but it was just impossible for them. SK leveraged the position very well, I have to say. Mad just couldn't find any way back into the game. They had one team fight where Mad Lions played super well. Probably one of the best team fights actually they've played this split, given the circumstances, given how behind they were, and given the composition they were playing into. They probably should not have done as well in team fight as they did. But in the end, SK Gaming was just too strong. It's Mad Lions was kind of trying to move a tank out of the way by blowing on it, and that generally doesn't work. So very good game for SK Gaming, who played to the composition very well and looked much better than they have in previous weeks. So props to them for taking that win. We then went to Fnatic versus Astralis. Here is the first game where I'm going to show clip, because something very interesting happened in my opinion. Niski picked the Casio mid, just to give a bit more context, and the game was basically decided before 5 minutes, and it was with the help of Niski on the Cassiopeia, which was that interesting pick, but it was mainly Whippo who came in on the Viego and sealed the deal before 5 minutes into the game.
Really good execution there. I don't think Animal will lose too much in the top lane, but there's going to be a 2v2 in mid.
I just feel like stun going to come over the wall, and Niski instantly going to try and turn this one. Easy, quick kill pick up. Fnatic already off to an incredible start. The leap in from Whippo. He's got the second E-cast if he wants it. The minions tries to get tricky with the smite to land it, but Zanzar with the clean side step.
Observers, if we could look towards top wave now, I think it's just crashing. White Knight should be able to catch it, but he's actually going to TP behind them, so there could be another fight. It's going to be a 3v3. Whippo has no flash. It's double TP committed.
Zanzar gets taken out. Oh, the Viego's going to be powerful in this one. If he can keep getting resets, he's going to start start to take off, but Whippo's gonna get burned down, but Whippo's gonna turn right back in, LSA on the way in! Whippo will not die! My god, it's an absolute slaughter!
No way. No flash on Promiscue. I think it's going to be a quadra kill. He should have to E up soon. The Q misses.
Whoa.
Can he get him? Niski picks him.
But yeah, in terms of this game, it was just yet another Stomp game. Fnatic was everywhere that Astralis wanted to be, I guess. And Fnatic was all over the map, pressuring Astralis very well. They played their composition very well. And as a team, they just stomped Astralis. It was a really one-sided game as well. It has become kind of the theme, I guess, for many of these games where the opposition didn't have much to say in it. We closed off Friday with Vitality versus G2, and G2 pulled off a very strange composition where they locked in Sejuani, so everybody thought, oh wow, here's Jankos on Sejuani again, but they actually put it in the top lane for Wunder, which wasn't a very good laning matchup for him. Sejuani in general is not just a very good laner, right? Especially in the top lane where other champions have much more sustain and can deal much more damage and can pressure much better. But Wunder held on decently fine. But what stood out most in this game was actually Reckless's pick, because he played Kalista, which is a pick he hadn't played since 2017, if I recall correctly. So that was very exciting to see. And in a post-game, he said, you know, like, this is a champion I still know how to play, just haven't played it. So he thought the narrative was oversold. I still think that when you look at last Summer Split, when Kalista was very strong and Fnatic avoided it, there was a bit more to it, but whatever. G2, I think, played with their composition pretty decently. I have to say that Vitality looked very... Yeah, how do you say? Like, it's a repeated thing with Vitality where you can definitely see that they have some plays where you think, okay, you know, this is very interesting. They know where to apply the aggression, but then as the game progresses, you can see that even if they're behind a little bit, that they have a lot of difficulty with channeling that aggression properly and pacing themselves in the game and in team fights and setting up objectives. It seems like sometimes they're a bit too bloodthirsty, where they see an opponent, they think we can go in, then one team member dies, and then the rest just keeps going in and dying, which is actually a point I discussed with Shigen at the top lane in an interview, which I will publish in the upcoming week. So stay tuned for that. But anyway, G2 was a bit more clean. I wouldn't say that this was by any means peak G2 performance yet, but Caps was having a fantastic game. Very good to see him. Jankos was playing well on the Lee Sin, absolutely popping off. So overall, G2 played it very well into Vitality, who had trouble deciding what they wanted to do with their team and with how they wanted to tackle G2. So clean stuff from G2 overall there. Then we went to Saturday, and Saturday kicked off with SK Gaming versus XL Esports. And even though SK Gaming had won against Midlines, I still thought that XL had a good chance of winning against SK Gaming, as you may have seen in my preview video, because I think that XL's roster upgrade were just very good. Now, XL was thrown a big bone by SK Gaming, because XL managed to lock in Gwen and Viego, which is a power couple that you generally do not see on the same side. Both champions considered very strong. SK Gaming, on the other hand, went for a Ziggs in the bot lane for Jesu. Now, the game was very even during the early and the mid game. Both teams were responding to each other's plays by making plays on the other side. But because of how the kills played out, SK got a little more goal out of it. You know, like they got kills at moments where they were actually able to apply pressure to the towers, get turret plating, or set up for objectives better. So that worked in their advantage a little bit. They got the first Drakes out of that. And XL from here seemed a bit panicky. They kept trying to find engages, but it was pretty awkward. Almost desperate at very times, and also uncoordinated, where in the previous weeks, even in their losses, I think you could see that XL was pretty coordinated and they set up for fights well. They seemed to communicate clearly, and off the back of that stayed in the race for even very difficult games for very long. But in this game, it seems like they were not communicating clearly. So that was definitely a downfall for them in this game. SK, to, you know, throw XL a bit of, like, cut them some slack, I guess. I think that a few times SK Gaming got away just barely maybe a bit of luck in team fights as well, where they just had a sliver of health remaining on a few of their players, and maybe that would have been a good window of opportunity for Excel to climb into the game. But overall, SK Gaming played just better, slightly better team fights. They won the game, and especially Treats was once again playing phenomenally, absolutely the best player on this team so far in this split. But I have to say that Lilith also played very well once again. So big props to that rookie coming in and performing so well in the support role. We then went to Schalke 04 versus Misfits, and I think that Schalke 04's games can be summarized pretty easily right now. It is that Broken Blade plays very well in the top lane, but the rest of the team just falls behind and the opponent wins through that. And that's once again what happened. You could see that Rezrok was having a very good game. Kobe and Vender were communicating clearly. Veteo, I don't think he was having the best game of his life, but he managed to get a few pretty good kills. And yeah, it was just another one-sided game where Misfits slowly but surely chipped away at Schalke 04. Didn't force anything weird, in my opinion, at least. And yeah, Schalke 04 had little to say about it. So a few times Nuclear Int and Broken Blade would try to make plays, but they were unsuccessful in doing so. So yeah, very tough for them, for Schalke 04 to be in the state, obviously. And with that result, and a bit of a spoiler, how the other results played out as well, they dropped to the bottom of the standings. So yeah, tough times for them, but Misfits played well. Pretty good to see that, that curse everybody was talking about, that, oh, Misfits performed well first half and then drops off. They're quite good at defying that at the moment. I think they have surpassed in their level of performance, but we'll get to that a bit later, but I think other teams are a bit better than they are at the moment. Anyway, we go to Vitality versus Mad Lions as the third game on Saturday, and the early game was pretty quiet. Humanoid got 2 kills and gained a big lead. Maybe, towards what you could call the end of the early game, if that makes any sense. So that's something he did well on. The Orion is obviously a champion that he plays pretty well on. But on Vitality's side, it was Selfmade who was playing super well. In the top side, Shigena was playing with Lulu to help him. Lulu gives the buff to Xin Zhao and he basically doesn't die. And you could see that definitely where Selfmade had a big outplay in the top side jungle where he was invading. And he did very well on the Xin Zhao in general. Now, Mad Lions had a very big lead, all accumulated through Humanoid, but Humanoid died a few times, as he generally does. He sometimes he just flips it, dies in the side lane, and that was once again the case. He was pushing in on Vitality's top tower, and he died there, which got Vitality a Baron, and actually that swung the game massively back in Vitality's favor, because both kills were given to Crown Shot on the Tristan, so he had a shutdown. He gained a lot of gold from it, big items, they get Baron from it, they push even further. So Vitality actually gained firm control over the game through Humanoid's mistake. He give it, he taketh away. I think that Vitality did a real good shot at just snowballing, closing out the game from here. But yeah, it was a bit weird how they did not manage to do that, because with the Baron buff, obviously they're going to push in some towers, but they seemed pretty indecisive what to do after that. They had that lead and they were like, okay, now what do we do? Well, Mad Lions, who is very good at team fighting, knows exactly what they want to do then, and knows exactly how they want to take every window of opportunity they can to climb back into the game. So they channeled their team fight power, and this happened.
Much more important, because at the end of the day, I think that this team's main goal is just getting to playoffs, getting a chance at those best of fives. Now fight kicks off.
Oh, Kazi dives in with the killer instinct. That was actually genius. Shockwave killer instinct combo to kill off Crown Shot, but can you kill Selfmade? He's the key carry for Vitality now. Has already used the Crescent Guard. Leader diving in with the quickness. There goes Selfmade onto Kazi, but Selfmade just can't get the damage down, and Leader's gonna fall. The charm still coming out. Leader with the second stopwatch there goes back in with the Kingslayer. Selfmade now in the midst of 5 members of Mad Lions, but Selfmade cannot survive. LeBrock will die. Selfmade will die.
And off the back of this, Mad Lions were able to get a Baron. Now, the game was still very difficult for them. Vitality, through their own Baron, had gained quite a lead, and Mad Lions still had, I'd say, a small uphill battle to fight, but they slowly but surely got into better positions because they were able to play coherently, whereas Vitality had difficulty in bringing the team together in the place they wanted to make. So, yeah, overall, through Humanoid and Karzi, I would say Mad Lions fought back very well, and they slowly turned this into a bigger advantage for them. They turned the game around and closed out the game. Very good stuff from them, even though, you know, they probably shouldn't have been in that position off the back of that early lead, which you probably should give Humanoid some criticism for. Still, he fought back as well very well and redeemed himself, I think, through later team fights. So, unnecessary difficulty for Mad Lions in that game, but they won in the end, and maybe just made it themselves a little more difficult to limit test. I don't know. I don't know what to say about it other than that. Then we went to Astralis versus Rogue, and Rogue had the interesting draft of Camille in the top lane for Odo Omni, which generally, you know, isn't the champion that we see him play a lot. Xin Zhao in the jungle, and Irelia for Larsen in the mid lane. Rogue did get 2 kills early, but a few moments later, Astralis had one of the biggest overall map plays that I've seen, where they got kills in the top lane, they got kills in their bot jungle, and all of a sudden it was 5-2 for them in kills, so a big advantage swing for them there. Now, Rogue, I sound like a broken record, played around the map, they even scored by picking off a few good kills because they played the map very well. And slowly but surely they started to find a lead because they saw exactly where they could find advantages in their play. Now, Astralis fought quite valiantly, but they just weren't a match for Rogue. And I think the best way to show how well Rogue was playing in team fights and playing around their composition, stuff like that, is this clip of a skirmish that happened in the game.
Better of their counterparts last time they faced. I forget what happened in the Fnatic game. I think that they did lose to Fnatic the last time they played.
Well, I'm just... Yes, I believe they did as well. As tower goes down, huge fight happening, as you say, but it's Odo Omne and Trimby versus the world, and Promiscue's the first to die. Trimby will fall as well. Zanzara steals away the Solar Flare. The backline,
okay.
But yeah, Hansa's on a killing spree, and Zanzara is on his lonesome. Odo Omne chasing White Knight and Magi Felix towards the Baron pit. Larsen's going to join them. Zanzara tries to get away, but Inspired will chase him down. And White Knight, I'm sorry, you got to be put on call waiting right now. Larsen takes...
And we closed out with the match of the week, G2 versus Fnatic. Now, heading into the game, I thought that Fnatic was a big favorite here because of the recent performances. But I think even in games, you know, in the past where you could see that G2 was a favorite, both teams really flourished. They, for some reason, a switch is flipped, where where both teams live up to the maximum potential that they have and really going all skirmishy. And this was just once again a game that you could see both teams really putting themselves to their current limit. It was very interesting to watch. Now, it all started in the draft where Reckless flipped out a Vayne, and that is another champion that we hadn't seen him play in quite a while. Fnatic side played Karthus in the jungle, once again for Bwipo, and Niski was playing the Irelia in the mid lane, which was a pretty interesting pick. Now, in the top lane, probably the most notable player on Fnatic side was Adam on the Dr. Mundo, who in the entire duration of the game just went very pleased, played very, very strongly in the top lane this game. Now, Fnatic did strike first with a few kills, but G2 went for their own plays, caught up a bit, and as expected, you know, it was just a very back and forth game. It was a very entertaining game, but one thing that has to be mentioned is that there were a few pauses. Fnatic had reported a few bugs. They had reported a few issues throughout the game, which made it very... I don't know, it kind of took the momentum out of the game. You know, generally you have this early game, and even if there are a few kills, you know, it just keeps ramping up. If there's no kills, you can feel the tension building up, especially with these teams. You know, you can feel, okay, when are they going to pull the trigger and start fighting? But with these pauses, it's like, okay, we had all this tension and now it dies down. And I think that overall, you could just see that, I don't know, it affected both teams, obviously. But I do think that it is fair to say that maybe it affected G2 a little bit more. Still, that is obviously something both teams are having the same issues. So if one other team can deal better with a potential pause than you, that is good on them, right? So absolutely nothing taken away from Fnatic. But just throughout the game, they were playing better than G2. I think you could just see that all the momentum Fnatic has had just kept on going. They were in a better state as a team in general. And I think they absolutely deservedly won this game. It was still a pretty close game, but I think that if I share any highlights of this game, it's probably just the final fight that decided the game in favor of Fnatic, because it was a bit of chaos, which reflects how this game went overall pretty well. But it was a very good fight to watch for the entertainment purposes.
Set off right at the start. Now, you kill Upset, he's coming back. You kill Whippo, he'll stay around for a good 5-10 seconds to put down more DPS. And really the question is, can G2 find Fnatic? Caps on the front line. Here's the TP from Adam. Hillisang straight onto Caps. Caps is gone, somehow surviving for the moment, but Hillisang almost down as well. The Requiem coming out. It's cancelled. Whippo on the front line. Reckless, you got to open up. You got to do the main things right now. He's looking for Niski. There's a couple of kills. 3 against 3 once again. Reckless flashing forward. Reckless dies! Flashbacks to double lift. You can't do that on a Vayne, Reckless. No matter what you do, Fnatic will find you. Reckless dies. Caps dies. Jankos dies. Mickey dies.
So with that, let's take a look at the standings of the LEC Summer Split at the moment. In first place, we have Fnatic and Rogue, both at a 10-3 score, and both teams are locked in for the playoffs. Misfits is in third place with 9 wins and 4 losses. Mad Lions in fourth place with 8 wins and 5 losses. G2 in fifth place with 7 wins and 6 losses. Astralis in sixth place together with Vitality at 5 wins and 8 losses. SK Gaming and XL are now at 4 wins and 9 losses, and Shokunal Fear is in last place with 3 wins and 10 losses. So let's talk about the team's performances in general and what I think is going to happen going forward. Shokunal Fear in last place is obviously terrible. They are almost certainly locked out of playoffs contention unless they start winning every single game from now on and some standing shakeups happen, I guess. But it's looking very unlikely for them to win. I think they have a very small chance of making it. Now, people are obviously going to say, oh, what about another Schalke Miracle run? Stop it. This team is completely different in my opinion. While they still have a good top laner, which they also had last summer split, I think that they have let this slip way too far off. And I think, they probably should have opted for Gilius and see if he could maybe bring some magic again earlier in the split, because we're heading into week 7 and 8 now. Even if he comes in now, there is just going to be too much synergy building that needs to be done probably. It's just Kirai has been incredibly disappointing this split, and Shokunal Fear should have realized that earlier and should have maybe, put Gilius back in. I obviously don't know what's going on behind the scenes, if there's any reason why they're not putting Gilius back in, maybe. But anyway, this roster is unsalvageable, and it was so quite a while ago, and Shokunal Fear should have made changes earlier if they were in a possibility to do so. They still have Gilius on contract. I can understand that, given that they're selling their slot and they're tight in a tight financial spot, they probably don't want to buy any new players. So give it a swing, see what happens. But this, it's pretty over for Shokunal Fear. It is what it is. Pretty sad to see them exit like this, obviously. But yeah. Anyway, XL then. I think XL, their honeymoon phase is over. You could see that in the first, when they went 2-0 with Markoon and Advienne on the roster, they beat freaking G2. It looked very good. Then they still looked pretty good last week, even though they went 0-2 in that week. And now you can see that this roster is starting to drop some games where you think, okay, you probably could have won this, especially the SK game, obviously, where it's one of the worst teams in the league. And if you want to contest for a playoff spot, you absolutely need to do this. They had Gwen and Viego in their lineup, which is a pretty big power pick. And then if you look at how they execute the games, then you could also see it was just slowly falling back into a pretty scrappy playstyle with uncoordinated plays, as I mentioned earlier. So it's looking pretty grim for XL to make playoffs, which is very disappointing to see. Obviously, I'd hope that this roster would really be a consistent contestant for their playoff spot. But if they're going to drop games like this and in this fashion, I really don't see them making it. but it's going to be very difficult. And if you want to hear Young Bucks' thoughts on it, I have an interview coming out with him this week as well, so stay tuned for that. SK Gaming, honestly, I really didn't expect them to ever break free from the 10th place spot, given how they were performing early in the split. Now, they have made quite a few roster changes, obviously, again. So I think I have to shout out Lilip once again. I think he has really quickly developed into a solid support player on LEC stage, which is very unusual to see. I still don't think that this team is gonna make the playoffs in any way whatsoever, but they are better than they were at the start of the split. Obviously, similar to how I've criticized other teams in the past for making changes very late and then realizing that I think SK Gaming should probably have been able to find a roster combination, given that Lilip was in their academy team, and they should have found this roster combination if they're really adamant about not putting things in the jungle. Yeah, they probably should have found that earlier than this. So still, management should be very, very much criticized for the decision that they've made this split. And I just feel sad to realize that if SK Game is going to make changes heading into next year, they're probably going to cut a few players that do not deserve to be cut, simply because management failed to put together a functioning roster in time, and only now is seeing some rewards for players putting in a lot of effort to make the best out of horrible circumstances. But again, Lilip and Treats especially played very well. Genox is a solid top laner, played very well as well. So I think that these three players absolutely should be kept and further developed on SK side. But we'll see if that happens. Vitality is also a team where I think mismanagement is the right term, because you have 5 players who in theory should easily make it to the playoffs together, but this team is just not coming together. And that is an issue that we saw in week 2, and you can say, okay, give them a bit of time, but it's an issue we're still seeing in week 6, and I know I'm going very hard on a few of these teams, but you need to look at potential, you need to look at past results and how it combines into how the teams are performing now. And what Vitality is doing and performing as a team is pretty inexcusable. Now, they are 5-8. They are absolutely still in the playoffs running spot, and perhaps they're going to make it. They're probably going to have to fight with Astralis for it. But given the talent on this team, they should be in a much more comfortable position. Given the progress they have not made, they have barely made any progress, I would say, as a team in terms of coming together as a team. I think Vitality should still consider this split pretty disappointingly so far. Obviously, maybe in the next 2 weeks they are going to be able to come together, but yeah, it's not looking good for them. Then we go to Astralis, who, if you look at the star power on that lineup, are at the same score as Vitality. I think you can give them much more praise. Obviously, 5-8 is not great, and they're not playing fantastic League of Legends, but given the expectations for this team, given this is a team that has seen steady progress over the course of the year. So I think they deserve much more praise for being 5-8 than Vitality does. Now, this is not a team that's going to contest for the title. This is not a team that I expect to even break into a top 4 or a top 5 even. I think if they reach playoffs, they'll probably be knocked out immediately as 6th place. But I think that you can still say that given the roster, given the players, they've made pretty good progress, and that would be a good result for them going forward. G2 goes 1-1. I don't think that's very disastrous. Their game against Vitality was fine. Their game against Fnatic, I think you could really see the flaws that G2 still has as a team compared directly to their old rivals who look much more clean in their gameplay. I don't think that going 1-1 is disastrous for them. I think this team, G2, has seen steady progress, and I think that it was very much expected for them to lose against Fnatic. I think the most important part for G2 was to play well in the game. They played fine, not the power level I think many would have hoped to see for a game between G2 and Fnatic, but they played fine. And I still think that G2 fans have a lot of reason to be optimistic because this team keeps gradually progressing throughout the split now. So yeah, it's fine. Obviously, for G2 standards at the moment, it's pretty terrible. And I still am very critical of how they approach this split. But this is the path they've taken, and slowly but surely you can see that it's kind of paying off. So sure, whatever. Mad Lions then, a tough weekend for them because even though they did win that game against Vitality, they made it themselves very difficult. I think Armut is really having a tough time on the roster. Very little impact from him so far in this entire split. It's mostly been the rest of the team actually who has been able to step it up in games. Predominantly Humanoid, who I've said before is for me the one of the best performing mid laners in the LEC at the moment. But yeah, I don't know. I still think that Mad Lions, as long as they make playoffs, as I've said at the start, they're probably gonna make Worlds because this is a team that really takes advantage of the best of 5 format. Now, they are not in the shape that I had hoped they would be, especially with all players now out of quarantine, them playing on stage where they said they really thrive, and we've seen before that's where Mad Lions really thrives. So I don't think that this is a team that I would say is gonna win the split at the moment. But yeah, they're playing fine. You know, they're doing the Mad Lion things. Last split as well, they ended with a 10-8 record. I think I think they ended with a 10-8 record. So now at 8-5, it's already looking much better with 5 games remaining. They're probably gonna exceed that record. I'm not exactly sure about their schedule, but they should perform a bit better than last split. So sure, Mad Lions are doing fine. For Mad Lions, they're doing fine. Misfits 9-4. Still, you know, people said, and I semi-expected Misfits to drop off. I've said before, I think their playstyle has become predictable and teams are going to read into that and perform accordingly and counter the strategy that Misfits is going for. But Misfits seemingly is just so good at doing what they do that they are still able to clutch out wins. Resorg is a fantastic player on this roster. I think he is by far the MVP of this roster for this split. Has helped them so much with his performance. So I think that Misfits overall is looking good. They're cruising to playoffs. I don't think there's any chance that they will drop out. Statistically, it's possible, but I don't think there's any chance that they will do so. So that's good for them. I think that in the best of 5, this team is going to get a rough awakening. So they really probably going to need to make sure that they end up in the upper bracket of the playoffs, because if they don't, I think, sure, you know, maybe they'll play against Astralis in the first one and they'll win that one, but it's going to be really tough for them to bounce back against a team like G2 who's so seasoned, or Mad Lions or Rogue or Fnatic in a best of 5 scenario. So I really think that Misfits should try to get themselves into the upper bracket so they can lose there and have a learning experience from that. We've seen teams before, Rogue, G2, these teams have all bounced back really strongly from being down in the upper bracket and adapting and learning from that best of 5 scenario. So I think that's really key for Misfits. Then Rogue is okay. I think that they're the second best team in the league at the moment. First one being Fnatic. They play fine. I think they're getting a bit more experimental with drafts, which is good to see. And I do think that that benefits them in the long term. But yeah, their map play is just super clean. They slowly suffocate you. It's not the most entertaining plays at times, but overall, Rogue is just solid. Rogue is solid, and I think really a good contender for the title. But I think Fnatic, the number 1 team, is the best team in the league at the moment. All across their roster, they're performing well. They're playing well together. I don't know what else there's to say. They are probably the only team where I would think, okay, if they go to Worlds, they can make it very far at the moment because of how this roster is performing at the moment and how well they're playing together. And then we go to the LEC SuperFantasy standings in my lobby. EU stay on my mind. In first place is Faramir with 3,946 points. He is quite far ahead of the rest, with Wittercast being in second place with 3,534 points. Bene is in 3rd place with 3,490 points. Loco X in 4th place with 3,482 points. You can see how close it is with all these being around the 3,400 point mark. Queen Dobrev in 5th place with 3,436 points. Laniri just trailing behind just ever so slightly with 3,431 points. I am just 5 points behind that with 3,426 points. Maeve is just 1 point behind me with 3,425 points. Stepan is a little bit lower, but still at 3,364 points. And then we have in 10th place Lucky Reed with 3,185 points. That was it for my LEC recap of this week. Let me know in the comments below what you think were interesting highlights. Which teams do you think really have a good shot at making the playoffs, especially that 6th playoff spot? I think is very much contested. Stay tuned for a lot more content because I have quite some interviews coming out the upcoming week. I made the schedule this week. So if you want to follow that, make sure to like and subscribe. If you want to stay up to date with my articles as well, follow me on Twitter. You can see that below on that button. And yeah, have a good week. I'll see you all for the interviews, although I won't be responding to you directly. I'll see you on Thursday for another LEC preview. And as I said, stay tuned for more content.